Eddie, my dear friend, I saved you for last for an important reason, because you told me so. And I remember where I was sitting, and I remember what I was wearing, and I remember where you were sitting, and I remember what you were wearing. We were on the 4th floor in 30 Rock. It was after the massacre in El Paso, something that Miles Taylor also talked about today, saying it was that moment that he knew that that shooter had likely been radicalized when he looked at the manifesto. And you spoke in a way that shook me and shook everyone that saw the clip that circulated for months and still does. This is who we are.
Mm-hmm. You know, Nicole, I was sitting here thinking as I was listening to David and Heidi and thinking about the first hour. And the way in which we are kind of representing Donald Trump. Think about someone who has diabetes, that there's already something wrong systemically in the body. And then you introduce a high level of sugar to that body. And what happens? It throws it all off, right? Now, we could blame it on eating that particular item, but there's already something wrong in the body. So what I want us to understand is that Trump isn't the problem. He just simply accelerated it, intensified it, right? What we're facing in this moment, I believe, are the new redeemers. That was that political coalition in the aftermath of the Civil War who organized in order to seize political power and enforce white supremacy. So we could talk about the conspiracy theorists and the white nationalists. What we have is a Republican Party that is, in fact, the new redeemers. That's who they are. They are defending an idea of America that presumes that people like me, people who hold views that are different than them, do not belong here. And they are willing to kill in the name of it, at least some among them. And then you have people in leadership who are willing to defend them. So we have to be honest in our descriptions. As I said way back when, this is us. This is us. And we have to admit it and stop Trump gazing and understand that Trump didn't deform the Republican Party. The Republican Party vomited up Donald Trump. They're one and the same in interesting sorts of ways. And once we get that around our heads, then maybe we can start making the choice, making the decision to finally imagine America otherwise, Nicole. That's what I'm thinking right now as I'm trying to process Kevin McCarthy going down to Mar-a-Lago, Matt Gaetz going to Cheyenne, Wyoming, Mitch McConnell doing what he's doing. My God. Look at the choices that these people are making, and what does it mean for the country?
Look, you put it more perfectly than all of the rest of us combined, because that's why we love you, Eddie Glaude. But I want to push you even further, and I want to ask your advice. I mean, I think this dawned on you maybe before it dawned on me, but I think that this posture we're in, waiting for Republicans to do something other than break bad, is part of the problem. They have broken bad. It's over. Mm-hmm. And I think that the question for all of us is a party that has dealt themselves out from legitimate governing, because you can't govern and you can't go back and forth and have a debate about how to make sure our babies don't die of dirty air or how to make sure they don't get shot in their schools. You can't have those debates if you can't agree on facts. And I don't know how Democrats and Republicans in the Congress would have a debate about making sure none of our babies get shot in kindergarten if they've got a member on the Education Committee who doesn't believe that babies got shot in elementary school at Sandy Hook. And I don't know how you have debates in a body where you've got people who don't see the truth. So my question for you, Eddie, is how do we talk about a party that doesn't think up is up and down is down?
You know, well, first of all, we have to do exactly what you just did. We have to describe them as they are and treat them as such. Look, it is one thing to call for bipartisanship. It makes sense to me on a certain level. But bipartisanship, just as agreement and disagreement, must presume a set of background conditions that allow us to disagree. In other words, what I mean by this, if you have some among us who are willing to throw democracy into the trash bin in the name of a view that this country must remain white, It must remain in the hands of a particular segment of the population. And they're willing to throw democracy away in the name of that. There is no ground to have bipartisan relationships with them. There's no basis to compromise with them, because if you do, you become complicit in undermining the very foundations of American democracy. So we got to get clear on those folk who agree to the background conditions for us doing work in this country. That is, they agree to the basic principles of democratic life in this country. And we know that a whole bunch of folk, not only do they not agree with the facts, Nicole, they don't agree with the very principles of democracy themselves. That's the key. They are not Democrats, small d. They don't believe in who we are as a country. And we need to understand that. And I'm talking directly to Tucker Carlson. I'm talking directly to Sean Kennedy. I'm talking directly to Mitch McConnell. I'm talking directly to Kevin McCarthy. I'm talking directly to all of these folk who are willing to throw this country away. Just as those folk in the South were willing to rebel and killed over 600,000 people because they didn't believe in it. That's what we have to do, Nicole. That's the ground for us to begin to do the work to salvage this place and imagine it otherwise. I know that was a bit emotional, but I guess that's what I do.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.